On the broadcast tonight, after a history-making election night, 4 more years for President Obama. Tonight, how he won, why Mitt Romney lost, and the message voters across America sent last night. We'll have a look at all the trends and results. Also tonight, the East Coast is taking another hit of extreme weather, and it's going to get worse. It means more trouble for millions of people already hit hard by Hurricane Sandy. The storm and the election. Nightly news begins now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. While the nation tries to recover from a deep recession and in a presidential race we were, after all told, was as close and as tight as they get, Barack Obama, the 44th president of the United States, was reelected last night. He was somehow able to stitch together a convincing victory, winning just about all of the battleground states that were so heavily fought over in the most expensive race in U.S. history. It was early this morning when the president appeared with his family, becoming the third consecutive two-term president we've elected. That hasn't happened since the time of Presidents Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. President Obama won a decisive victory in both the Electoral College and in the popular vote. The outlier, the one state on the map not yet called, is Florida. And here we are on the East Coast also covering this, a nor'easter, a storm so fierce, the governor of New Jersey said today it will move his state's recovery effort backwards for a time. And here's a live picture of the map of the states on the 30 Rock skating rink we used as part of our coverage last night of election night. Tonight, it's under a layer of swirling snow. Back inside, we begin tonight with what happened last night, the president's historic re-election to a second term. He's on his way back to the White House tonight. That is where Kristen Welker starts off our coverage. Kristen, good evening.
Brian, good evening. After a grueling and bitter campaign, President Obama returns to the White House as a two-term president. And with the economy still limping back to health, the stakes could not be higher. President Obama triumphant this afternoon, heading back to Washington, where voters decided he should stay for 4 more years. At his campaign headquarters in Chicago this afternoon, Mr. Obama thanked staff and supporters. This after a night of emotional celebration in his hometown of Chicago. 20,000 turned out, shedding tears and sharing hugs.
A long campaign is now over. And whether I earned your vote or not, I have listened to you. I have learned from you. And you've made me a better president.
A passionate speech.
Michelle, I have never loved you more.
Mixed with a little bit of humor aimed at his daughters.
I'm so proud of you guys. But I will say that for now, 1 dog's probably enough.
The president has held almost 200 campaign events, logging thousands of miles aboard Air Force One. The two candidates spending more than $900 million, making this the most expensive campaign in history. It's a victory that at times seemed impossible, given the anemic economy.
Hugely disappointing jobs report.
And sharply divided electorate.
A toxic and disruptive debate here on Capitol Hill.
Mr. Obama seemed to recognize the renewed urgency for bipartisanship.
I am looking forward to reaching out and working with leaders of both parties to meet the challenges we can only solve together.
Even pledging to accomplish things this time around that he wasn't able to accomplish during his first term.
Reducing our deficit, reforming our tax code, fixing our immigration system, freeing ourselves from foreign oil. We've got more work to do.
And Mr. Obama tried to bury the hatchet with his one-time foe.
In the weeks ahead, I also look forward to sitting down with Governor Romney to talk about where we can work together to move this country forward.
In the moments after he won, this digital age president posted this photo, which quickly became the most liked ever on Facebook. Just one more image of Barack Obama's groundbreaking journey. Now, with a potential economic crisis looming, the president already reached out to congressional leaders in both parties in an attempt to show he is serious about bipartisanship. And right down the street, Brian, work has already begun on viewing stands for the inauguration. One more point, I am told that the crew aboard Air Force One gave President Obama a congratulatory cake on the way home.
Kristen Welker on the White House lawn starting off our coverage tonight. Kristen, thanks. Now to all the questions being aimed at Romney campaign headquarters in Boston after a sad night there. And the question, what went wrong in the Romney campaign? Peter Alexander covering. He is there for us tonight. Peter, good evening.
Brian, good evening to you here in Boston. This is apparently the intersection of politics and the nor'easter. In the words of one top aide to the Romney campaign tonight, the mood within that campaign is a lot like this weather, dreary. At the end of a 6-year-long quest for the White House, tonight Mitt Romney is left asking himself what might have been. Dressed in a business suit and surrounded by family, friends, and for a final few hours, a Secret Service team, Mitt Romney this morning left his Boston hotel, abruptly returning to life as a private citizen.
Hey, Governor, can you give us a word?
On this November 7th, the day Governor Romney promised voters he'd get to work, the only campaign work left to do, tearing down and packing up. Just before 1 o'clock this morning, more than 90 minutes after most networks had called the race, Mr. Romney took the stage alone.
Like so many of you, Paul and I have left everything on the field. We have given our all to this campaign.
But his disappointment at the end of a 6-year quest was palpable.
I so wish that I had been able to fulfill your hopes to lead the country in a different direction, but the nation chose another leader.
Mr. Romney thanked supporters and staff, but saved special words for his wife of 43 years.
She would have been a wonderful first lady.
Today, Paul Ryan, who was reelected to the House and will have a much bigger voice in the Republican Party's future, released a statement. I'm immensely proud of the campaign we ran, and I remain grateful to Governor Romney for the honor of being his running mate. Hours earlier, as results poured in and excitement drained from the election night ballroom, aides cut the audio to the giant broadcast screens, instead cueing the band to play. And today, one of Mr. Romney's top surrogates, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, spoke for his fellow Republicans.
So I was extraordinarily disappointed last night. I was surprised, that it ended as quickly as it did. But it's the way it goes. People decide elections.
Another source close to the campaign put it more succinctly, telling NBC News, this one stings. And Brian, within the last hour, Governor Romney left his campaign headquarters. He was there wrapping up a farewell meeting with his staff, now leaving those headquarters perhaps for the last time.
Peter Alexander at the end of the Romney campaign in a blustery Boston mass tonight. Peter, thanks. And Lester Holt is here with us in the studio after we all went through this long night with a look at how the Obama campaign was able to stitch together this victory.
Well, the short answer is they recognize the demographic shift in this country, Brian. You could argue the Romney campaign was working from a very solid playbook, but in retrospect, it may have been an addition that was simply out of date and based on old assumptions.
Mitt Romney's loss has conservatives confronting the reality of a shrinking Republican base.
The white establishment is now the minority.
Since 1992, the percentage of white voters in this country has dropped from 87 to 72%, while at the same time, the percentage of Latino voters, who tend to lean Democratic, has steadily grown.
Demographically, this is a different country, and Republicans need to understand that.
In 2004, President Bush got 40% of the Latino vote, John McCain 31% in 2008, and for Mitt Romney this year, just 27%. In the wake of Tuesday, Republican soul-searching will center on places like Florida's Osceola County near Orlando. Bush won it in 2004, but a growing Puerto Rican population, transplants like Rafael Suarez, have now helped fuel Obama's second victory there, a group largely disenchanted with Republicans.
You go out and disrespect the Hispanic community like that, you think that we're not noticing that?
In Florida alone, the Hispanic population has grown more than 500,000 since 2008. But among them, Republicans have been perceived as tone deaf on a topic of critical importance, immigration reform.
How do you send them home?
Well, the answer is self-deportation, which is people decide that they can do better by going home because they can't find work here.
The words matter. Even though Barack Obama has deported more undocumented Latinos than any other president in the history of the United States, it's the words that are used. Self-deportation was, I think, really, really hurtful.
Republicans must now figure out how to balance their core values and ideals against this shifting demographic landscape. Population transplants like Rafael Suarez have now helped fuel Obama's second victory there, a group largely disenchanted with Republicans.
You go out and disrespect the Hispanic community like that, you think that we're not noticing that?
In Florida alone, the Hispanic population has grown more than 500,000 since 2008. But among them, Republicans have been perceived as tone deaf on a topic of critical importance, immigration reform.
How do you send them home? Well, the answer is self-deportation, which is people decide that they can do better by going home because they can't find work here.
The words matter. Even though Barack Obama has deported more undocumented Latinos than any other president in the history of the United States, it's the words that are used. Self-deportation was, I think, really, really hurtful.
Republicans must now figure out how to balance their core values and ideals against this shifting demographic landscape.
Census. And essentially what they saw in the state of Florida, and they did this all through the 9 battleground states, but we are focusing on the state of Florida because they figured out, okay, we're not going to carry any new counties. They're not going to be able to expand the electorate outside of the counties that they're going to do. And in fact, they carried fewer counties in Florida, but what they're going to do is find more voters. And what was interesting, go to that white vote. In Florida, in 2008, the white vote accounted for 71% of the vote. Well, in 2012, yesterday, the white vote fell down to 66%. So all of a sudden, more than a third of voters in Florida were non-white. What does that mean going forward, Brian? I just want to show you what this means for the electoral map. I think it means in 2016, you're going to see Georgia, you're going to see Texas, and you're going to see Arizona possibly in play because that's where the Hispanic population has been booming.
All right, so many numbers, so little time. Chuck Todd back at his board. Chuck, thanks. And so many races, so many results. Andrea Mitchell here with us with more on what happened last night.
A lot happened last night. When it was all over, the House remained Republican, the Senate remained Democratic, but that doesn't mean that a lot didn't change in the election last night.
It seems to me, first of all, from what
in a year when a male Senate candidate talked about legitimate rape and Mitt Romney spoke awkwardly about binders full of women, the voters made it the year of the woman. The new Senate will have 20 women, a record, including 5 women elected last night, ranging from the first Asian American woman elected to the Senate to consumer advocate and Harvard professor Elizabeth Warren, who defeated Republican Scott Brown in Massachusetts.
You better believe we're going to fight for equal pay for equal work.
In Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin will be the first openly gay member of what used to be called the world's most exclusive men's club.
I will be a senator for all of Wisconsin.
As for those Republican candidates, Richard Murdoch and Todd Akin, who made controversial comments about rape, they both lost. Akin to Missouri's Claire McCaskill, who held on to her Senate seat. And Tammy Duckworth, an Iraq War double amputee, won a House seat in Illinois. In New Hampshire, all the top elected officials are now women. The governor, both senators, and the members of Congress. Democrats started recruiting women candidates almost 2 years ago.
Almost at the beginning of the time when the Republicans came into power in the House, and the first few bills they put out took away a woman's right to choose.
For the first time, white men will be in the minority among House Democrats. But House Republicans will be more white and male, although Michelle Bachmann won her race. This election also saw gains for same-sex marriage. 2 states, Maryland and Maine, became the first to vote for gay marriage. And Washington State and Colorado voted to legalize recreational marijuana. Massachusetts legalized it for medicinal use only.
In plain English, there's a whole lot of weed on the ballot in a whole lot of places tonight.
But pot didn't do so well in Oregon and Arkansas, where voters defeated legalization.
Still, as the poet once said, the times they are a-changin'.
Boy, are they ever. Andrea Mitchell, after a long night. Thanks for being with us tonight. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, a big storm that is an urgent matter for millions of people along the East Coast tonight, many of them still racked up and suffering from the last one. Like the last time we went through this, we had a lot of warning and notice that a storm is coming, and sadly, just like last time, it's making conditions miserable for a whole lot of people. The nor'easter that's upon us in the Northeast tonight, the New Jersey governor said today it will actually set back recovery efforts in that state. NBC's Katie Tur is in the small peninsula community of Seabright, New Jersey. not far from New York City to the south along the Jersey Shore. Katie, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. Here's something you don't see very often. We have accumulation on the ground and flooding. Here in this town of Seabright, it is 3 blocks wide at its widest. We have the ocean in front of me and the Shrewsbury River behind me. It floods during nor'easters, and it got hit really hard during Sandy. You can see that by those buildings behind me. Now, this town, along with the rest of coastal New Jersey, is wondering what they're going to wake up to. 10 days after Hurricane Sandy ripped apart the Jersey Shore, towns are scrambling to prepare for the first major winter storm and restore the battered coastline. The Weather Channel's Mike Seidel this morning.
Here at Point Pleasant Beach, they spent the past week grabbing all the sand back on the streets and bringing that sand out to the beach, building a dune that's twice as high but not as wide as the one that was wiped out by Hurricane Sandy.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie warned this nor'easter could stall the restoration effort.
I hate setbacks. I don't tolerate them usually very well, but this one I can't control. The weather is what it is, and we're going to have to deal with it.
This afternoon, Seabright, New Jersey is empty and broken as the town awaits another dangerous storm surge. Town Councilman Reed Murphy has the hard job of making sure folks get out of town for their own good.
We got people in here that are going to start calling us and asking us to come get them. It's dangerous.
Throughout New Jersey, on the shore and inland, there are still 369,000 homes and businesses without power.
The water hit the house.
Among those trying to cope, longtime Brick, New Jersey resident Mike Prisco.
The water was right at the top of the fence. And
he stayed for Sandy, which poured 4 feet of water into his basement. And he's ignoring the mandatory evacuation this time.
The worst thing that can happen is that tree being pushed over on the house.
Up and down the shore, neighbors are helping neighbors.
Best we can do is just pray for our friends and the people that are around us.
Fearing that what Sandy managed to leave behind, this next cruel storm will take away. There is a code blue across New Jersey right now. That means there are emergency shelters open and warming centers for anybody who needs to get warm. And Brian, I will tell you, it is very cold out here.
Katie Turr, Seabright, New Jersey. Katie, thanks. Into the studio we go. Meteorologist Janice Huff standing by. Janice, we estimate we got upwards of 1 million folks who can't still see this broadcast. This is just about more than this region can take.
Exactly, Brian. And with the wind so strong out there with this storm, too, people who maybe just finally got their power back may lose their power again. It's snowing outside right here in New York City like it's the middle of January. And Katie mentioned the cold. That snow band extends from New Jersey all the way into the Berkshires of Massachusetts. 1,400 flights canceled in anticipation of the storm. Here's our future tracker, and it looks like this moderate to heavy snow will continue from New York City up through western Massachusetts, southern portions of New Hampshire through midnight tonight, and it will continue in parts of Maine even into tomorrow morning, but then it will slowly wind down. In terms of snowfall totals, 2 to 4 inches expected in New York City, 4 to 8 from western New Jersey into western Connecticut and the Berkshires, maybe as much as 10 inches in the higher elevations, Brian.
Absolutely hard to believe. Janice Huff, thanks. We'll take a break. When we come back, a plunge in the markets today. We'll look at what had Wall Street so worried. On Wall Street today, something of a post-election hangover after worries about Europe's debt crisis exploded back on the scene. Worries about our own debt problems here at home contributed to what was the biggest one-day loss in a year for stocks. Dow was down just under 313 points. NASDAQ lost almost 75. S&P was down almost 34. We have asked Maria Bartiromo to join us from CNBC World Headquarters to answer the question, what's going on here?
Well, a lot's going on, Brian. It was a real tough day on Wall Street today, and part of the reason was that we now know that we are not going to see much improvement in Europe over the near term. But a big portion of the sell-off was disappointment over what is to come under President Obama. The investment community is worried about higher taxes. They're worried about higher regulations. And as a result, they sold today, and they are thinking later. The fiscal cliff, the biggest near-term worry. Let's not forget, at the end of the year, we are going to see $600 billion in spending cuts take place. That may very well mean layoffs in the defense sector, healthcare, transportation. Couple that with tax increases for
most income levels if they don't get their arms around this fiscal cliff. That's the big issue. People want to see compromise in Washington. So before we actually know what's going to happen, investors said, let me sell right now and think later.
Before there can be hope, there has to be worry. Maria Bartiromo, thank you, as always. We wanted to give you an early heads up. We're going long tonight, an extra half hour. But if your NBC station doesn't stay with us, please be ready to switch over to our live streaming coverage on the web at NBCNightlyNews.com. Another break, and up next, the first daughters growing up before our very eyes. One of the enduring images from last night was when the first family emerged in Chicago. A lot of people were thinking about the memory of 4 years ago, and all parents can sympathize with how fast the kids grow up. Of course, not all kids have to grow up in the public eye, but what a striking image of the Obama family last night, and there you have the Obama daughters from 4 years ago. The daughters, by the way, Malia is now 14, Sasha is now 11. Again, we are staying put here tonight to offer a second half hour of special coverage on this day after the election, while most of our NBC stations will be carrying our second half hour. If yours is not where you live, you can watch our broadcast live streaming online at NBCNightlyNews.com. For now, however, that is our broadcast for this Wednesday night after election night. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Brian Williams. We hope to see you either way back here tomorrow evening. Good night.